If you're looking for a home mortgage, look no further than Premise Mortgage. The Premise process is simpler, faster, and more convenient than the competition because of their cutting-edge technology. Plus, Premise is an independent company, yet is backed by a bank. Therefore, they can offer all kinds of products for clients with various needs and deliver an awesome customer experience. Premise Mortgage is licensed in 43 states and counting. Contact Richie Love today at 704-607-1497. That's 704-607-1497.
Matt Doherty, the 6'7" sophomore from East Meadow, New York.
Leadership is learned.
A starter on Coach Dean Smith's legendary 1982 Tar Heels National Championship team with Michael Jordan.
Jordan comes down with a rebound. Clears it away to Doherty. Doherty going in against Floyd. For the layup, it's good.
Leadership is earned.
Head coach at the University of North Carolina and the University of Notre Dame.
You notice Matt Doherty, he is up working every second of this ball game.
Leadership is taught.
Public speaker, author, and executive coach.
And leadership does not require a title.
This is the Rebound Podcast with Coach Matt Doherty.
Robbie Shaw is a former basketball player and graduate of the University of North Carolina, Chapel Hill, and has a master's degree in clinical mental health counseling from the University of Southern Maine. Robbie spent the last decade working with families and individuals who battle various levels of addiction. Throughout his life, he struggled with addiction and ultimately overcame the behaviors that caused so much suffering for himself, his friends, and his family. Shaw states, "I now live a life full of enjoyment and love, and also one where I give back to the world that shaped who I am today." This exchange with Robbie goes real deep, probably deeper than any other podcast guest I've gone with. Take a listen. Charlotte Observer, March 17, 2022. Shaw recounts his first experiences with alcohol as a sixth grader at Alexander Graham Middle School near South Park. This is Charlotte, North Carolina, obviously, who got sick, yet couldn't wait to do it again because being under the influence felt so good to him. He explained how he believes mental health issues were passed down to him from his father, a depression sufferer, and asserts that alcoholism was passed on to me. Whatever was creating the need for alcohol was passed on to me. The onset of severe anxiety and depression in college, coupled with alcohol addiction, caused him to ruin relationships, to develop habits involving other drugs, to fizzle in his role as a JV basketball player at UNC Chapel Hill, and to take 7.5 years to graduate. His troubles continue to worsen after college, building to a crescendo with him in his late 20s. At the tail end of 2006, a bender that saw him kicked out of a friend's house for being hammered, being arrested, his fourth DUI, and getting the shakes while waiting to get out of a drunk tank. He says he swallowed his last ever sips of booze while being driven by a stranger to a detox center in LA. That is from the article about Robbie Shaw in the Charlotte Observer, dated March 17th, 2022. Robbie, welcome to the show.
How about that intro?
I don't usually welcome people with that kind of intro.
Hey.
As you hear me recount that article, which was a little over a year ago, how does that make you feel?
Well, that was a long time ago. I have recounted that experience and those series of events numerous times. So it doesn't punch me in the stomach like it used to. But it certainly still punches me. It was a real time for me. You call it bare bones, call it shell of a man, all those phrases that take you down to your core. That's where I was during that time. And that's, I can still feel it. I can definitely still feel it. It makes my stomach turn a little bit when I hear that.
When did you decide you needed help? Was that it in 2006 in the detox center in LA? Or was it after that? Or was that just kind of teaser, like an appetizer, and you say, I'm good, I can take care of this, and you try to do it on your own again? Tell us about that little journey after 2006 in a detox center.
Well, that was the end. That was the bottom. So getting some help and dipping my toe in and thinking I can continue to control it, that occurred for the decade prior to that.
Mm-hmm.
First time I went to treatment, I was 20 years old. I quit drinking at 29. So those 9 years were what you just said, was in and out. Maybe it's not so bad. Maybe I overreacted, got in some trouble, then got out of that trouble. So felt like I, got a pass, a little green light. So that was kind of the roller coaster during those 9 years from 20 to 29. I could go through many stories, but what it led to was, there was a couple things. Obviously, there were the external consequences. There was the getting in trouble and getting these DUIs is no joke. Eventually you're going to go to prison. And after that one I got in California, my lawyer said, you're going to prison. No, I didn't. And that's a whole nother story in itself. But my point is the external consequences were building and building and building. I had lost friends, lost relationships. My parents barely spoke to me, no money, no job, all that stuff. But what really led to it, obviously, and a lot of people know this, is how you feel internally. External consequences certainly influence how you feel internally, but how I felt, I'm not sure I'll ever feel that again in my life. It's on the verge of, should I just, take myself out of this world?
Right.
When you're at that low point, there's literally zero value. There's no identity. There's, the self-esteem is gone long ago. That you're just at a place where you don't even know how to function.
Yeah. Tell me about the 20s. You said the first time you went to detox, you were 20?
First time I went to treatment, I was 20.
Treatment.
And
Gotcha.
that was after a DUI. That was my, I like to jump in the car, it just was my thing. It was a place that I could escape. I could play music and I could just get away from everything. And that was where I went when I drank to a certain level. I jumped in my car.
So you were 20 years old drinking. Were you a student at Chapel Hill at the time?
Yes, but I was in and out of college, hence the 7.5 years and no doctorate. Yeah, I was in and out of school, failed out, kicked out, dropped out, coming back to Charlotte, working some, trying to clean up, couldn't quite get it together. Couple weeks would go by, 3 weeks, something like that, and I'd feel much better and just kind of go back to being 20, 21 years old. Mm-hmm. And I mean, I was an alcoholic. That word gets tossed around and it can have a lot of different meanings, but man, I fit it. I couldn't stop when I started, and when I started, it went to the full extent, and I got in trouble just about every time.
Who was there trying to help you either? And they end up enabling you or trying to give you tough love, family members, friends, others?
Yeah, that's a great question. There's not a long list of that. If reading that article, you saw I came from a family that had alcoholism in it. My father was an alcoholic, a very active one, fairly functional until he wasn't. So during that time, I would say as far as enabling goes, that's my loving mother. Married to an alcoholic, her son's an alcoholic, and she just wants to pamper that kid, and we're going to get you better, and we're going to get you better, and we're going to get you better. And typically, what that method did was allow me to continue to do what I was doing. My dad tried to give me some tough love, but I didn't really listen to him. Made that decision early on in my life, so that didn't really ring true. My friends, early in my 20s, I was a pretty fun guy. Right. I wasn't a fighter. I wasn't an asshole. Can I cuss on here? Or should I not?
Yeah.
I wasn't a jerk. I really wasn't. I was pretty much a pleasure to be around.
You're a fun drunk, life of the party.
Yeah. I mean, for the most part, certain times people saw me go overboard, but it was a little concern, but nothing ever, no interventions or anything like that. Later in my 20s, I was living up in New York City, and it was getting pretty bad. Drugs were getting more and more into the mix. And that really is what expedited, I would say, my recovery was, getting into the drugs. It just, if I never did drugs and just drank, it would have prolonged everything. But the drugs really took you down.
So in a way, the drugs helped you reach the bottom faster, and as a result, maybe reach sobriety faster. Is there
Absolutely.
Yeah,
absolutely.
Do you feel that everybody who has an addiction needs to hit bottom to get out of the addiction? Can they get out of it? Like, let's say it's a 10 scale and you go -10. Do they need to hit -10, like hit the bottom? Or can they go to -5 and then get out of it to get back to maybe 0 or wherever? It's a sobriety level of sobriety.
Now, there's a level of complexity in that question. Addiction, as you know, is a scale. Essentially, it's doing something that continues to create negative consequences. Now, what that looks like for person number one can look very different than person number two. So person number one's addiction could be very functional, no big issues. Maybe it's, I heard a guy say one time he didn't remember reading his child a bedtime story, and he couldn't take it.
Right.
And then I heard another guy say he crashed his car and killed his daughter. Now, those are two very different rock bottoms.
Right.
But
yeah.
So who's to say? So, bottom is where it gets gray. It's people's bottoms are very different. They look very, very different. To answer your question, yeah, something needs to happen.
So a relative bottom, a relative bottom.
Exactly.
So that something guy had some self-awareness with his daughter, reading to his daughter. The other one, that was an obvious bottom.
Right.
But without that bottom, are they able to recover?
I don't think if you show signs of true addiction, whether it's 1 on the scale or 10 on the scale, that you make a conscious decision and a willingness usually loses its power when you're battling addiction.
Yeah.
Because you shouldn't do it, yet you continue to do it. That's the definition. So something needs to happen. Some sort of intervention, some sort of consequence, some sort of light has to occur. Yeah.
Yeah. I don't know what you know about me. We have more in common than you probably realize. We both attended UNC. We both played basketball at UNC. We're both alcoholics, and my rock bottom was the Jersey Shore in 1988, maybe, and waking up on a porch of a house that I wasn't staying at. And back then we didn't have cell phones. And so I didn't know where I was, and I just started to walk until I found the beach house I was staying at with, and showed up, and the friends, like, that's funny, right? And when you're in your late teens and early 20s, it's kind of funny. It's like, that's what you do in college.
Good story.
But then all of a sudden you get to that age of 26, and it's kind of not that funny. It's like you shouldn't be doing this. And I went and sought counseling on the west side of Manhattan, and she told me I had the symptoms of a chronic alcoholic. And I felt the gut punch, and then I went to AA, and that was about 34 years ago. I hadn't had a drink since, and I was blessed to recognize my bottom was the porch, waking up on that porch. And the blessing that I could give that up. And I remember, the first night when I decided I'm not drinking anymore, that first social I went to where I was going to see my friends. and, some of the friends that didn't know, and I wasn't going to tell anybody, and so I just decided I'm not going to drink. So I went to a black tie at the Intrepid, west side of Manhattan, and I'm going to drink cranberry juice with a straw because that looks like a mixed drink. And about midnight, people start bouncing into the walls.
Right.
I'm stone sober. And I'm like, oh my gosh, these people look foolish. That's how I looked.
Mm-hmm.
And then I went home, I don't know, reasonable time, let's say 1:00, get up, go for a walk, go get breakfast. I mean, I'm up by 9:00, where most Saturdays in New York, I wasn't getting up until noon.
Yeah.
Feeling like crap.
Yeah.
So, you and I have a lot of similarities. So
we do. Hey, I got a quick one. So when you came back to coach at Carolina, I was there. And what years were those?
2000 to 2003.
Okay. So I was in my later years, and I was about to finish school there, but you came out to a little place, a little private guy's house, and
you were there.
Yeah, I was there.
That was with Alan
Lynch,
Cobb. Cobb.
Alan Cobb. That's right. Yeah, I was there, and you had orange juice and a cigar, and I remember, and I remember thinking that's disgusting.
That's weird.
That's right. And we were all drinking beer, and I had already been to treatment, and so when I saw you drinking orange juice, I knew then that you had stopped. I didn't know any details, but I was privy to it.
How about that? I was thinking about that place the other day. What was that place called?
The Lodge.
The Lodge?
Yeah.
And was that associated with a fraternity house?
It was considered a secret fraternity.
Okay. So, but were you in a fraternity in addition to being part of the Lodge?
I was.
Okay. Gotcha. Yeah, that was pretty cool because I knew Alan Cobb's brother Cobb, who was a Carolina graduate and a judge in Wilmington, and that's how I got to be there. Yeah, I remember that day. It was a cool place, and unfortunately, I was run out of town before I really got to enjoy the Lodge with you and your friends. That's another story, another podcast.
Hey, learn and grow, right?
Wow. Learn and grow, man. Learn and freaking grow. Yeah. Who did you lose in your journey? Like the people that you think about once in a while. Could be a girl you were dating, could be a family member, could be a buddy that because of your addiction, you damaged that relationship and you couldn't get it back and you'd love to see him again.
I think, it has been 18 years since I took a drink. And so in that 18 years,
Congratulations.
I appreciate it. I appreciate
awesome.
it. I've had a couple other little issues with, marijuana's come back into play a little bit, but I'm off of that now. I mean, that's all in the past, but my point is during that time, there's been a lot of amends, right? I've made a lot of amends. And so anybody that I ran off, I've gotten back, and there's really not anyone that I couldn't repair a relationship with. That being said, it's probably worth, when I was in college, my first girlfriend, when I was a freshman, playing on the basketball team, king of the hill kind of thing. I was dating this girl and she was a junior and I was just, riding as high as I could. Well, I ruined that relationship, and that was absolutely a direct result of my use. Yeah. And it was the first time in my life that I couldn't get something back. I had kind of lived a life where,
good-looking guy, you can talk your way out of a problem.
Exactly.
And
couldn't get this one back.
Yeah. I remember.
You remember those?
Yeah. I know her name. I know her first name. And, you think, well, I end up getting sick, and I think she's like, "Oh, I didn't think you were like that," and I saw on campus,
yeah,
but never, yeah. And then, yeah. So you go down that memory lane. There's a lady who, without her, I probably wouldn't have gotten sober, and her name's Pendle. And I was engaged to her, and she was tough, and I needed that. And without her, I may not have gotten sober. And I thought I saw her for the first time last year at a basketball game at Charlotte Catholic. And yeah, she's walking up the steps, and I hadn't seen her, and I went up and said hello, and yeah, it's a journey, and life is a journey, and that's what this is about. Because I want people to hear these stories and realize they're not alone, and that's a line that you use. You are not alone.
Yes.
Talk about your work now, and this is like, I wrote a book, Rebound from Pain to Passion. And so I'm turning my passion, my pain, which was losing my job at North Carolina. They questioned my leadership, into my passion of teaching leadership. And yours pain was the addiction we just talked about. So now, you went on a journey to learn and study addiction, and now try to help other people. You have a cool podcast, the Champagne Problems podcast. Tell us about You Are Not Alone. Tell us about what you're doing now and how you turned your bad experiences into helping others.
Whew. Okay. Well, I'll start by saying, when you were telling some of your story about Pendle and some of those heartbreaks and those things that we went through that just were extremely painful. I think a lot about, I have an older brother who has 4 kids, and his second oldest was a phenomenal baseball player at Myers Park here in town, and got really good his junior year. And his senior year was going to be, they recruit for baseball super early. People are getting recruited as sophomores. And so he was a little late to the game, but his senior year, he was the man, and he was going to be the man, and he was probably going to get to go somewhere good. And COVID hit, and it got thrown away. And so baseball was over for this kid, and he was all in on baseball. And I remember saying to him, this will all make sense one day. And then I had to follow that up with, that doesn't make sense in itself when I say that. And I understand that, but there's times in our lives where we look back and say, if that didn't happen, then this wouldn't have happened. And if that didn't happen, then this wouldn't have happened, or I wouldn't have this, or I wouldn't have this relationship. And I just love that, especially now that we are further in our lives and can look back at series of events and say, those things led me to that, which led me to this, and led me to where I am now, which I'm very happy with. And I love that. I think that's really cool as far as just what, I lost my train of thought. What your first thing was? Well,
it was about how you turned this negative addiction into a positive, and the line that you have, I read in an article, You Are Not Alone.
Yes,
your
not
podcast.
Alone.
Yeah. So talk about
so
You Are Not Alone and how you're helping people now.
Yeah. So that, it'll all make sense one day, leads you to, looking back and working with people who are battling similar things. And yeah, I mean, I studied addiction, I battled addiction, but my addiction is a symptom of other stuff. I mean, it's, that was just a coping mechanism and a soothing mechanism and a survival mechanism, really, because I just was not able to deal with the pain that I was feeling. So there was all these other things that had taken place in my life that led to the addiction. So I can look back and work with all these people and try to help them through addiction. But really what I'm working with them on are all of these experiences and emotions and reactions and thoughts that they are uncomfortable with. And that's where we're not alone. And that's, I often say that. And I did say that a lot in that article, because people feel these things, and it's whether it's anger or sadness or grief or whatever it is, and it hurts and they don't want to feel it, but they also think something's wrong with them. And that's, I mean, I felt the same thing. I was heartbroken over a girl. Why am I such a wimp? Why can't I be tough and macho like my buddies? And Well, we're all battling the same stuff. We're just not talking about it, or we're not open about it. And that's normal and natural. Like, we don't necessarily naturally want to talk about feeling sad to our buddies at the fraternity. But the fact is, we're not alone. We're all feeling it. So why I got into that area of work, it's what I knew. I think that was really the main reason, was because my 20s, I didn't have much to show for. I mean, I had jobs. I worked on Wall Street. I did some stand-up comedy, but none of that stuck. None of it. I mean, it was all a blur and a haze. And so I couldn't really utilize that going forward. So when I got clean and quit drinking, it was a clean slate. I was like, what am I going to do now? I got nothing. So I'm going to start fresh. And it just made sense. I know chaos. I know pain. I know depression. I know feeling like it's the end. I know feeling helpless and out of control. And all these other people I know are feeling this. So why don't I go work with these people? It just makes perfect sense. And so that's what I did. I got a master's degree in clinical mental health and went down that path.
And where was your first job in clinical mental health?
I've always been in private practice. I've always worked for myself. I got my master's degree from University of Southern Maine. I was living in Portland, Maine with my now wife. And so I did a couple internships and some jobs with some hospitals up there. But as soon as we moved out and I started working professionally, it was always for myself.
So did you meet your wife while you were sober or before you became sober?
Great question. Before I became sober.
Yeah, that's what I do, man. That's what I try to do, is ask some good questions.
I love it. There's little things blinging in your head. Yeah, I met her when I was living in New York. When I was towards the end. I mean, I was, up for nights in a row, and met her at a wedding down here in Hickory. I flew back from New York, met her, sparks flew. We dated long distance.
Hot shot comes back from New York.
Oh, big hot shot in his tight jeans.
Yeah. What kind of jeans?
Yeah. And she had actually lived in New York previously, and then came back to Chapel Hill to go to medical school. Anyway, so we dated long distance, and I was able to hide it, as best I could from her. And I hate that, because I still have to look at my wife and know that I was so dishonest with her. But I hit my bottom during that time we were together, and it got really rocky, and she left me and came back and then left again. And then I got clean and we rekindled everything. And,
What's your wife's name?
Here we are now. Her name is Dr. Ashley McDonald, and she's an
Ashley
angel.
McDonald.
She is an angel.
Good. Great name. So she had to really learn to trust you, because she didn't know, right? So how long did that take?
Well, earlier I mentioned that I've had some issues since I quit drinking with marijuana, and that I've lost her trust in that space again. As recent as 2 years ago. So she trusts me in a lot of areas, but it's still a little gray in the sobriety area, unfortunately.
So you were talking about alcoholism is a symptom, or drinking, the addiction is the symptom of other stuff. And then you mentioned pain. Talk about that a little bit more. What is the pain? What is your pain that you're trying to deal with through alcohol and drugs?
That's deep, Coach. Deep.
We go deep, man.
Yeah, let's do it.
Go deep.
I'm all for
you're
it.
Getting a little like, you're kind of moving around. If, the people that
squirmy over here
just listening, you're moving around, you're getting a little sweat on your brow. Come on. You're not running 33s in the Smith Center.
No. No, I love talking this stuff. I could do this all day. Yeah, my pain started early. I mean, I had an alcoholic father, a severe alcoholic father. People who know me know this story. And of course, my mom's going to listen to this because she loves you and she loves me. And she's going to hate that I tell another story about her husband, but I'm going to do it. He was a beast. He was a beast. He was successful, and he had his own demons, man. Deep demons. And he drank to the point of intensive care life support 12 times. Literally was on his deathbed 12 times. Towards the end, he left his family, lived with someone else, died of alcoholism, just an ugly death. Ugly death, never got clean. Really, really sad last part of his life, which was about 15 years. Now, you asked where my pain comes from. That's not really it. Those later years, it was the early years. He didn't really know how to be a father. And that deep-rooted inner voice that I still battle is where my pain really starts. It is, you're not good enough. You're never good enough. You have no value. What you say means nothing. You're an idiot. That's my inner voice. And it leads to lots of depression, lots of anxiety, and lots of therapeutic work.
Did you try to cover that up with not only the drinking, but you said you were doing stand-up, and I think of Robin Williams, who committed suicide. People, is that common in comedy? Like people trying to get approval and get laughs and
I think stand-up and just being an entertaining, funny guy are hand in hand. Mm-hmm. People just take it to the next level. Obviously not all comedians are riddled with pain and that kind of stuff, but plenty were. But there's a lot of people covering up their pain with humor. I think that is one of the most common ways to do it. Make light of everything.
So I remember when I met with this counselor on the West Side, and she had me do this short survey. And I think one of the keys was, have you blacked out? Like, yes, I've blacked out. 2, the first time you drank, did you get drunk? And I got drunk in 8th grade. And so you talk about being in 6th grade. So you beat me, by the way. You were a 6th grade All-American drinker. I didn't become an All-American drinker till I was 8th grade. So I'm a little, but anyway.
I just tried it in 6th. I wasn't a drinker quite yet, but I tried it.
But did you get, I know, but your first time drinking, you got sick. So did you get, it felt good to you, right?
It did. It did.
So, but some people, I look back at my childhood, it was pretty darn good. The trauma I had, I got cut by the NBA, and then I really started drinking in New York. You deal with disappointment, and you're working in New York, and the bars don't close, and you have access to alcohol, and you're not driving because you get cabs and subways. And, but I do think, and, from what I've researched, and you correct me if I'm wrong, but it's also is hereditary, right? And you touch on that a little bit, but I want to make sure that's clear to the audience that it is sometimes passed down through the gene pool and doesn't necessarily have to maybe have that pain. You just have that gene. You I don't know. Am I butchering that or what?
No, you're spot on. Often we want to simplify things and we want to have an answer and an explanation. And so often people are, oh, it's hereditary. Oh, it's trauma induced. Oh, it's this, it's that. Well, addiction is as individual as the individual. I mean, we all have our different reasons. But to your point, yes, a lot of it is hereditary, not necessarily the addiction piece. The higher probability of battling addiction later is a result of how your body processes alcohol. So it's in your gut, it's in your brain. For instance, my wife, if she has 2, maybe 3 glasses of wine, she feels out of control and her body starts to reject it. She'll start to sweat. She'll start to feel uncomfortable and sick. I could drink 2/5 of liquor and I wouldn't have that feeling. I would feel more in control and I would feel better and better and better as I drank. That is hereditary.
Okay.
100%.
Okay. We might be related. Right. So now you stop drinking, and I've heard this, and I feel it. You still can have an addictive personality, but like now, my addiction's like chocolate chip cookies, cigars, Nicots. Is that fair? I mean, does the addiction transfer?
I mean, I think it often does. I think that is super common to some people thrive off dopamine. I have a doctor that tells me I'm a dopamine guy. And so I'm always looking for a hit. Boredom kills me. I can't stand it. And so, a package of Nicots will give me that hit or, whatever else. And for me, it's food. Fortunately, I'm tall and I have a good metabolism, or else I'd be 600 pounds, but I eat like an absolute horse. I don't stop. I love it. I love to eat. I really do. So, some people
comfort food.
Chinese.
Really?
Oh yeah. Yeah.
What
Sweet
about
and
New
savory.
York? You spent that time in New York. What about New York? The Italian food get you?
I love the Italian food. I love the Chinese food. I would say those are my 2 favorites, Italian and Chinese. Yeah, when I was there, it was early 2000s and the China Grill. Do you remember that place?
Yeah.
Somewhere kind of in Midtown. It was a big old Chinese restaurant, but a little bit nicer. God, we used to kill that place. So fun.
Yeah. No, I love the chicken parm. I wear it out. Like go back to New York and eat at Carmine's family style.
Oh yeah. Yeah. I cook a lot. Yeah. I'm a big chef. I do.
Oh,
it's one of my favorite things to do. It's very meditative. I can really hone in on it. And people often say, well, what do you cook? And I cook what I like to eat, which is Asian food and Italian food.
Yeah. Yeah. Did you ever go to AA?
I did. I did a lot actually, and I have pretty recently. It's always come and gone in my life. I was introduced to AA 26 years ago for the first time, and so I could safely say that I've been kind of in and out of AA for about 26 years. It's always my go-to when I'm struggling.
Mm-hmm. Can you, do you have alcohol in the house?
I do. Yeah. My wife has wine.
Yeah. Yeah. Me too.
Yeah. That's not
you go to a party, you go to a party or a bar or restaurant with friends. You okay?
I am okay. I don't choose to do that very often. I rarely socialize in a big party kind of atmosphere. I much prefer smaller, more intimate settings. But if I have to, holidays and whatnot, I'm okay for a while. It's not that I'm not okay in the sense that, I get squirrely and maybe want to drink. It's that I don't have fun. It's miserable, right? I mean, if people spitting all over you and sweating and yelling at my wife, I'm like, let's get out of here.
Yeah. Wait till you get to be 61. There are two kinds of entrepreneurs, those who run their businesses and those whose businesses run them. If you've lost control of your business, consider running on EOS, the Entrepreneurial Operating System. EOS is used by more than 190,000 companies worldwide to help simplify, clarify, and achieve their vision. My friend and colleague, Brandon Blell, is a professional EOS implementer. She can help. Schedule a meeting with her at eosworldwide.com/Brandon-Blell. That's BLELL, or connect with her on LinkedIn. If you are looking for a commercial roofer, you got to call Catamount Roofing first. They are experts in the commercial roofing space, serving North and South Carolina. The team at Catamount specialize in commercial, industrial, medical, and institutional roofing. They will care for your roofing investment every step of the way, from design and installation to maintenance throughout its life to ensure maximized watertight service. Solutions through perseverance. Catamount Roofing. They work to make your roof last longer. Get in touch today at catamountroofing.us. That's catamountroofing.us. So, how do you deal with anxiety now? And talk us about cold water plunges. That sounds freaking awful.
Exactly. It sounds awful. Yeah. And I think I know where you're going with that, with kind of the intentional suffering piece. For me personally, I have and part of this comes from that stuff I mentioned earlier, just an inner voice that's not very kind. And that typically leads to anxious feelings, often panic attacks. I've suffered from panic disorder for years. And so when I do things that I don't want to do, whether it is clean the yard, go for a run, wake up early and stretch, whatever it is that I would rather be lazy. If I do those things, I get a massive rush of accomplishment, and that low self-esteem, that mean inner voice really switches. And so the anxiety typically goes away when I do those things. Now, I don't always do them, but the cold plunge, the ice bath is the ultimate intentional suffering, doing something that I really, 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 really don't want to go do because it sucks. But it is the most, it is the most rewarding thing. 3 minutes in that ice bath. And my anxiety is gone for a week. I am riding high for a week after doing that. It's insane.
Well, just think if you stayed near 6 minutes, it'd be 2 weeks.
Sure. Right. It's really about the mental battle that you overcome in doing it. It's all, I equate it to like running a marathon in 6 minutes. It's you're getting this endorphin rush and you're doing something that is just so miserable, and then you overcome it. It's an incredible tool.
I
know you've heard about it. It's trending right now.
Yeah, I'm sure. Yeah. Let it trend away.
Trend on.
A couple things you talked to about the mental battle. I interviewed John Gordon the other day, the author, and we'll have him on the podcast coming up. And he talked about a gentleman who says, we sometimes listen to ourselves. We need to talk to ourselves. And the mental battle, instead of listening to what our mind is saying, our body is saying, we need to talk to us like, you can do this. You're good enough. So words of affirmation versus you suck. You can't do this. You're not tough enough. And you talked about your low self-esteem. And I say it's really hit me this spring. Every every Final Four, March Madness is a trigger for me because I could still be the head coach at North Carolina. And I see these coaches making $3 to $5 million a year and being on national TV. And so March triggers anxiety, negative emotions, depression for me. And so, how do I get through that? I'm tired of dealing with that every March. I mean, I'm going to watch it. You can't avoid it. It's going to, even if I don't watch it. I mean, I hardly watched any games this past NCAA tournament, but it still hit me. And then it takes me about a month to spin out of it. And couple things. One, this book I listened to called Soundtracks, and it's like, what do we say to ourselves? Because the person we spend the most time with is ourselves. And the things we say to ourselves, we wouldn't say to our worst enemy. Like, right. You're an idiot. Oh, I can't believe you did that. Or that was the dumbest decision ever. Or what were you thinking? Or she won't want to date me. Or your kids don't like you. Or you're like, oh, wow. So these, like in the morning, I do three things. I pray, I journal, and I do an anthem. And at first I thought this was soft, like I grew up in New York and you gotta be a tough guy. And, this is BS. And I'm not going to tell anybody I'm doing this. Like, that's way soft. And I started doing it and it helped. So, like the anthem is like, today's a new day. I'm in charge. I'm the CEO of me. When you deal with, faced with an obstacle, do it anyway. I have a gift worth giving. So I say that to myself every morning. And then I journal. And I tried the journal with the blank sheets, but this one's kind of a cheat version. The 5-minute journal kind of gives you questions. Like, what would make today a great day? What are the 3 things you'd want to accomplish today? What gifts do you have? What are you grateful for? And those things really help me. I still take a dip, and I'll take a dip at weird times emotionally. Like, I'm on the golf course the other day, beautiful day, enjoying it, but all of a sudden I'm by myself and I'm like getting into a funk. And I'm like, I got to shake this. Like, why am I in a funk? It's a beautiful day. I worry about the future too much. And just trying to find ways to self-correct. And I think the positive self-talk is key. Do you journal? And then I pray. I think my relationship with God, like, God, okay, you put me in this situation for a reason. Like, what do you want me to do with this? And, I think having a relationship with God has been very helpful. Tell me about your faith. Tell me about, do you journal? And how do you spin out of a little bit of a funk?
Yeah. I mean, I think I'm still kind of learning that. There are things that work sometimes and don't work others, as you know, it often, if I'm in a funk, if a funk comes over me, I can typically figure out where it came from. And that's usually the key for me. But at the same time, and there's a few questions in there and I'll get to them, but
yeah, I know. I think you can handle them. You're a Carolina guy. You can handle multiple questions.
Multiple. I got major organization going on in this brain. The self-talk, I definitely do that. But at the same time, and you may be familiar with cognitive behavioral therapy, it's change your thoughts, change your behaviors, change your behaviors, change your thoughts. For me, my behaviors very much influence my thoughts and vice versa. But ultimately, if like I said, ice bath, go for a run, stretch, do these things physically that I know will make me feel better, I automatically feel better. And so when I get into a funk, yes, I do talk to myself and I try to figure out what's going on. And sometimes I'll beat myself up in that, like, quit being a puss, whatever it is, and try to talk my way out of it. But ultimately it's some sort of action that I've got to take that will boost me out of that funk. not every time, who knows? It depends on what's creating the funk. But I will say that after, not that I am, in my latest years of life, but the life that I have lived, I don't react like I used to a lot of things. There's a lot of tough stuff in this world, as you know, and I feel like there's some bad news every day we're getting, and a lot of it is doom and gloom, and a lot of it is, societal or cultural, and a lot of it is personal within my own families, and that's where, we are not alone, and we're all dealing with stuff like that. I'm going all over the place here, but I do want to say one thing, that I had a guest on my podcast named Dr. Lisa D'Amour, and she is highly known for her parenting research and her methods in parenting, specifically young teenage girls, but she does cross the board with young teenagers ultimately. And she often talks about mental health. And what she says is, if you're, say your 13-year-old daughter loses her dog, and if she is upstairs crying in her pillow, if she's having mood swings, if she's not eating, if she's having some anger, that is a natural way to react to what happened to her. Mm-hmm. Even though it's painful, even though you don't like watching it, even though you want to fix her and help her, that is actually a healthy response to what happened. Now, if she's using drugs, drinking, hurting herself or whatever, that obviously is not. So when you say you're on the golf course and things go down, or there's a trigger during Final Four, or for me, it's something else, those are healthy responses. That is actually being mentally healthy. It's not enjoyable, and you've had to learn how to overcome it, but it's actually a healthy response to a trigger in your life. That helps me a lot. Faith, I grew up in the Christian space. I grew up here in Charlotte. Over time, I have backed out of organized religion just because it didn't resonate with me. And what does resonate with me is more of a universal kind of spirituality take on things. It's still very vague, and I can't explain it, which does lend itself to some level of faith. It's just not in an organized kind of secular space.
Yeah, no, that's fair. That's fair. That's yeah. Do you say the serenity prayer still?
Oh yeah. I pray.
Yeah.
I pray.
You pray?
Yeah, a lot. A lot.
Yeah,
I meditate.
How about that?
I meditate a lot too.
You were talking, Robbie, about praying. You said you pray.
I do pray. I mean, I talk to something. Yeah. And I share.
Higher power.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Do you journal?
I don't journal much. I'm a big thinker, and I think we all are to a degree. And I love the idea of journaling, and I have journaled in the past. I just don't do it much now. That would be one of those things that if I did, I would feel accomplished and feel good about myself, but I don't do it.
Yeah, you do ice baths. I'll do journaling. Yeah, I'll take the 5-minute journal versus the 3-minute ice bath
versus the frozen body.
Wow. How do people connect with you? With in through social media, through email, through your website?
Yeah, I mean, I think most people find me on social media. I mean, if anybody's looking for me, it's a simple Google, and there's the podcast, there's my private practice, there's my social media accounts. I mean, do you want me to list those or
just give your website? Call out your website.
Yep. Well, there's a few, but I would say the best one to reach me at is now I have a studio now, a podcast studio called Everybody Studios. And that is where I'm receiving most of my communication. That is spelled a little funny. There's no vowels. It's EVRYBDY studios.com. So if anybody wants to reach out to me and for any reason, whether it's a podcast related or it's addiction related or it's crisis related, that's where to do it.
Tell us about the philosophy of your podcast, because I think it's an interesting take, a little bit of a nuanced approach.
Yeah. It started as I wanted to write a book, and I felt like my life experiences personally, professionally, and as a son of an alcoholic, and I've got all these family members, and it's just riddled my life. Alcohol alone has really, really jarred my life in many ways since day one. And I've always wanted to write about that. And I've always wanted to educate people on more so the reality of it. And I understand that not everybody battles it, and plenty of people can drink, in a controlled manner. And I'm not a prohibitionist, but I do want people to be more aware of the facts and the reality and the risks associated with it. And so I was going to write a book, and then somebody was like, dude, nobody knows you. Nobody's going to buy your book. You need to gain a following first. And somebody said, well, why don't you do a podcast? And so that's kind of the inception of it. And then as we thought about how to gain followers and how to be unique and original, we thought, well, let's not talk about alcohol. And also to reach as many people as possible, we thought, let's not talk about alcohol in the addiction space, because that's going to limit us. That's going to kind of pigeonhole us with only people that battle it. I would like to reach everybody. So let's talk about it through a wellness lens. Let's talk about alcohol as it relates to your sleep, to your relationships, to your work performance, to your parenting, to your marriage, all the above. How is it affecting me? If maybe it isn't, but let's look at it. And that's how we started the podcast, talking about it through that lens. And man, it took off. It took off. People, and we also go into the addiction space too. We just cover it all.
Yeah. Who was one of your guests of note that sticks out?
Do you know Laird Hamilton and Gabby Reese? Laird Hamilton's a big wave surfer. Gabby Reese, his wife, she came on, and I've actually become connected to them, and I've done some workouts with them. Gabby came on. She's incredible. Carrie Walsh Jennings, gold medal winner, beach volleyball. Yeah. She came on. Mm-hmm. Who else? Our favorite Dookie, Gerald Henderson, came on. He had some really good stories. Mark Manson, who wrote the book, The Subtle Art of Not Giving a F-U-C-K. Very popular book. He came on. He actually came on. I asked him to come on, and he wrote back, I'm not doing any interviews right now. I'm actually not doing any podcasts, but a month ago I decided to stop drinking. So I'm going to come on and go public with it. And so he went public on our show with that, which was pretty cool.
That is pretty cool. Yeah. As you've studied addiction and talked to a lot of people, what is a good book for somebody to read to learn more about addiction? Or maybe they're wondering, do I have a problem? Do I not have a problem? Any book or books you would recommend to listeners to listen to or read?
Yes. The first one that comes to mind is called This Naked Mind, and it's by an author named Annie Grace. She is well known in the, alcohol kind of gray area drinking, whatever you want to call it, alcoholic space. Her book is I'm not the only one that would throw that out as number one. It's incredible. And she came on our show as well.
This Naked Mind.
Naked.
Gotcha.
From the South. So
you're from the South. You are from the South. Yeah. The dead giveaway. You'd be on the west side of Manhattan hanging out thinking you're cool at the grill. And you said naked. And they go, huh? Where are you from, man?
Naked. Yeah.
That's good stuff, man. Hey, I could go on and on. This has been really a pleasure to get to know you. Just get to know you. And I think just sharing talking about it. I remember going to my 40th high school reunion, and I'm open about it now. And I had like 3-4 classmates come up and say, yeah, I stopped drinking too. Yeah, I stopped drinking. I had a problem. And, it's very prevalent. And when growing up in high school and college, it was kind of like accepted. And it was a thing. And you drank till you got drunk, and next morning you woke up and you told stories on each other and you laughed and you did it again.
Yep.
Until you realized
it was
26.
It was fun.
It was fun. Yeah, it was fun. It was kind of a hobby, kind of thing to do. But it ruins lives, ruins relationships. And by sharing your story with us, you know that you're not alone. Robbie Shaw, thank you very much.
Yes, sir. Thank you, Coach. I appreciate you having me on. I'm honored, and I hope you will be a guest on my show.
Yeah, let's do it. Let's do it.
Leadership is a learned behavior. You're a leader, whether you're a parent, a coach, a business owner, or a friend. We all lead in some way, shape, or form. Thanks for listening. I welcome any and all feedback. You can reach me at dohertycoaching.com.
This is Brian Anders, native Charlottean, recovering engineer, and seasoned entrepreneur. I am proud to support Matt Doherty and his podcast because even though he's not famous for his vertical leap, he truly knows how to rebound. We all know it takes community to get back on your feet and pursue that next opportunity. I invite you to connect with me on LinkedIn at Brian K. Anders. That's Brian with an I, K. Anders, Anders, and I will see you online.
At Action Plus Ideas, your brand is our purpose. Elevating brands through premium merchandise and apparel is our expertise. With a legacy spanning over 30 years in Charlotte, we take pride in serving our community and beyond. With exceptional service, top-tier products, and always on-time delivery, we create lasting client relationships. As a prominent promotional products distributor, we offer competitive pricing, superior decoration, and inventive marketing solutions to make your brand stand out from the crowd. Contact Action Plus Ideas for more information at actionplusideas.com.